Do your parents know that you're wrong and that you're a fool? Have you,
I'm not going to back down at all. I think
how you're wrong.
Wait, in what way am I wrong?
Have you told them? Have you told them? I mean, just in general, just the way, the whole wrongy way that you are.
I'm not. I'm not wrong. I'm not. I don't care what you and anybody says. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Playback. My name is Nate.
My name is Brandon. And today, God damn it, we are talking about the Metallica album. Not one of the ones that we would like to be talking about. We're talking about...
Not this one.
Not this one.
Not that one.
Not that one.
Not this really good one.
Nope. We're talking about Saint Anger. I think, like myself, this is the first time that you've heard Saint Anger since it came out?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Okay, so after listening to it, impressions, go. Give it to me.
Let's just say it's as not good as I remember it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's as frustrating, as anger-inducing as it was when I was 12. 13, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Brandon, what about you? You listened to it as well for the first time, and I hope in 20 years. What were your impressions?
This actually was the first time that I have ever listened to Saint Anger all the way through front to back in my entire life. I remember very clearly when it came out, but I never listened to it all the way through at the time. It's really like a shame. I think that there's some really good, worthwhile music happening here, and it's ruined by some choices.
Used to having the drummer do the beat part.
Some choices of ways to make a record.
Maybe we should talk about next week.
Well, all next week is therapy.
Yeah.
Do we have to do that?
That I think make it ultimately just not fun to listen to.
I don't know how you feel. I'm in a shit mood.
Nate, you are the bastard who did this to us and chose Saint Anger to be the next episode of Playback and make us have to listen to it. So why did you choose this album, sir?
So I don't want people to think that we chose Saint Anger as an afterthought. It's a worthy album, worth discussing.
Yes.
But we did pick it because very recently we had a discussion about Chinese democracy. Like Chinese democracy itself and its first several iterations, it just wasn't up to snuff. I personally think it just wasn't good enough. So we decided to voluntarily, on our own accord, scrap the entire episode that we shot. That took hours.
And we're going to remake it.
And we're going to remake it. In the spirit of Chinese democracy, we're going to remake it. But in lieu of that discussion eventually coming out, we did need something to talk about for this episode. And we promised at the end of our last episode that we wanted to do something crappy. So we picked the easiest available crappy album off the shelf, which was Saint Anger, which happened to be honestly a really fascinating album to dive into.
This was a really interesting album that you picked, and I'm really glad that you picked it because, like, all snarkiness aside, I really feel like the first thing to say is that Saint Anger is an album that, like, it's cool to hate.
For sure.
It's an album that has a certain reputation that is like the entire world has already decided that it's stupid and that it's lame and it's a joke and it's bad. And so that's just right there. So, like, I think that it's more complex than that, really, honestly. Like, there's more to it than that. But there's a lot of truth to the reasons why it has a bad reputation. Like, listening to it all the way through for the first time, it's like everything that people have always said about it, about why it's bad, and just what is not good about it. Like I could hear it.
It's true.
There it is. And I don't like those aspects of it. But it's not that one dimensional though. There's way more happening, and there's lots of good ingredients in there that I feel like nobody ever talks about. So.
And the reason people primarily don't like this, or the argument everyone hangs their hat on to say this album's bad.
Are we about to talk about it? Are you gonna go ahead?
You know what I'm gonna say.
Go ahead, say it. Say
Pong,
it.
The snare.
The snare.
Everyone hates it because of the snare drum, and it's like literally it's really bad. I'm not gonna downplay how bad it is, but it's like it was relatively low on the totem pole of things that were like driving me crazy listening to it. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. That's really interesting. Because for me, that is the worst thing about this album. Still is the snare. And it's a meme. It's like even people who have never heard the album, like me, I had never listened to the album all the way through before. And I knew what's wrong with St. Anger, Brandon. The snare.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's the meme. Yeah. But still listening to it, I thought, to my ears, the snare was the worst aspect of this album.
This is how you take a normal, good sounding snare drum and turn it into the complete abortion of St. Anger. Okay, you ready? Rock and roll. St. Anger. That's simple.
So like what I'm curious, like what else what bothered you more, I guess, than the snare? What could be
Honestly,
worse than what the snare drum sounds like on this fucking album?
Complaining about the snare is like the tip of the iceberg of just the drum set. The drum set itself sounds like shit. It sounds like a toy. The snare doing a lot of that heavy lifting. They made a point of pride in saying they didn't like over mic the drum kit when they recorded this. And it sounds that way. It sounds really roomy. There's like way too much kick drum, and the kick drum sounds like shit. There's like simultaneously a whole like ton of like 10K, 1K like click every fucking time he kicks the kick drum. But also it's like boom. It's like this huge like awful like roomy ringing kick drum. So like the snare is like a symptom of like a way deeper problem, and it's just their thought process going into it from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm glad we could get this out of the way. That yes,
it's the elephant in the room when you're talking about St. Anger, the snare drum, and like you're saying too, which is very astute, like the wider drum sound in general. But mostly the snare though, right? Or
it's
no?
really bad. I'm not
you?
going to downplay how bad it is. I'm telling you, it's really, really bad. But I've heard this album quite a few times, and this time listening through, I was like, yeah, that's there. But I managed to like kind of let it recede to the back of my awareness a little bit, and just kind of try to listen to the rest of the aspects of this album, because there's way more going on than the snare. And the discussion around the snare drum has been beaten to death for 20 years now.
It's been beaten more than Lars beat the snare drum while he was recording this album.
Which, you know, it's still 100% worth talking about, and we will continue to talk about it. But there's so much more to this album that makes it not good.
But the reason why I wanted to bring it up is because this is not a case of something that everybody got fixated on at the time, and then now 20 years later when you go back and listen, it turns out like it's not really that big of a deal. This isn't like that. It is egregious. It's like over the top.
You see that thing up there? Yeah. That's called the snare.
The snare is a microcosm of Lars Ulrich himself. It's aggressive, annoying, pokes you in the face. It sounds like shit. I want to get away from it as fast and as far as possible. It's a choice that fucking Lars Ulrich would, of course he made it, you know. It's like, especially at this point in time, he was the most annoying man in rock and roll. And he decided, you know what? Guess what? I can be more annoying than that.
I mean, this was the peak of it, right? When this album came out in 2003, right? This was the peak of Lars Ulrich being famous for being an annoying dude.
Yeah. This is when he brought a list of 350,000 people's names who downloaded Metallica's music on Napster to Congress and said, "Look, Congress, hey, look, all my fans that love my music, they didn't give me $5 for it or fucking $20, whatever, you know."
Are you proud of what you achieved with the whole Naps thing? Are you proud in hindsight of what you pulled off?
Being the most hated man in rock and roll.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those you end up on the wrong side of history moments, you know.
You live long enough to become the villain or whatever the fuck, you know. He
what is that?
born a hero, but die to be a villain, or
that's
you know, he jokered. He jokered himself. He became the Joker.
So this album was made during and came out during that period of time when it was at the peak of that, right? Like, that's what he was famous for, and him in particular.
He was the tip of that spear. He led the charge.
He was the face of that movement.
Yeah, and he was the one that was like particularly.
He still is the face of that movement.
Yeah, and he was the one that was like particularly pissed off about it enough to fucking do everything that he did.
Metallica is suing Napster, a website that provides software which allows people to download music on the internet without paying.
Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich testified before a Senate committee earlier this month that Napster has, quote, hijacked our music without asking.
It was pretty useless crusade, in my opinion. You know, in the grand scheme of things, like he did not make. I want to emphasize, Lars Ulrich did not make a difference. He didn't fix anything.
Right. Yeah,
nothing happened as a result.
His mission,
it was total failure. Like,
his mission that he set out on didn't accomplish it.
What difference did we actually make? It's a great question. Great.
But like I said, it ultimately is an example of someone ending up taking a stance on the wrong side of history. At least so far.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe 100 years from now, everybody on the planet will know that file sharing is like the worst thing that you can do. And Lars Ulrich may be taught about in school as like the founder, the freedom fighter before his time, who was villainized and was never recognized for the hero that he was until after his death or something.
All I know is
who fucking
this
knows?
Dystopian picture you're painting, I want no part of it.
I don't want anything to do with Metallica anymore. I'm going to be crashing their CDs. I took all my CDs and I'm going to be destroying them.
Both you and I are huge fans of Metallica, right? And I feel like there's a high probability that any given person on the planet is a fan of Metallica. Listening to this really reminded me that like even in discussions that me and you have had, whenever we go to pull names to include like when we're giving examples of the biggest acts in the world, in the history of music, we always mention people like Michael Jackson and Prince and David Bowie and the Beatles and the Beach Boys and the Rolling Stones and Red Hot Chili Peppers and things like this, right? And it really made me realize, like, Metallica belongs on. They are
certainly.
It's not even my opinion that they belong on that list. They are
certainly are a part
amongst them,
that pantheon. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, they're one of the biggest music acts in the history of humanity.
Hundreds of millions of albums sold. And
now I will say my own opinion. They're fucking badass.
They're so good.
They're so great. They are the shit. I love Metallica.
Same.
And I have ever since I was a little kid. You know, I was like 7 years old, 8 years old or something, maybe younger than that. Way too young to have anything that what Metallica is, just like songs about death and suicide and, you know, bodies and war and carnage and just aggressive, crazy thrash metal.
Awesome shit.
Way before an age where that would appeal to me. Mm-hmm. But my older brother was way into it. And he had the cassettes, and he used to play the Black Album. He used to play Master of Puppets. He used to play Ride the Lightning. And I remember seeing like how into it he got. And that was like, oh, there must be something to this. And then I got into it. And still to this day, the sound of a band playing full-on blast beat, thrash, metal, aggressive music, like feels comforting to me.
Yeah. Kind of like, I feel the same way about like horror movies, actually. Like bloody, gory horror movies. That's like, it's like chicken soup for the soul for me.
Interesting.
Metal is about horror. Monsters, ghouls, and angels of destruction leer out of the album covers. Bands called Megadeth, Abattoir, Slayer, and Dead on Arrival bash out songs called Regurgitated Guts and scream bloody gore.
Like,
this is so interesting. I think you are making me understand horror movies for the first time in my entire life right now.
you just made my day.
Because-
you just made my day, if that actually is true.
Because I can't stand them. I don't identify. I don't get it. I hate horror movies. I never want to watch them. And I've always wondered, how can someone enjoy it?
Yeah.
But like,
it's a weird catharsis. It's violent. It's aggressive. It's scary. It gets your heart racing. I'm describing metal music right now, by the way, Brandon.
yeah, yes.
But I'm actually.
These are all things that I love about hearing.
But
metal.
actually,
Yeah.
I'm also talking about horror movies as well. They're totally part of the same, type of entertainment for me. It's like
I never thought about that. This is amazing.
It's total fantasy. It's like James Hetfield's not a fucking psychopath, okay? But if you believed every lyric he sang, you would really think he was. But he's not. Look, if the surrounding documentation around this album, St. Anger, is any proof, he's a big softie.
Yeah, totally. And it's a thing all across thrash metal. You know, they're not real Satanists. They sing so much about war and destruction and
Devil and
murder,
Satan and fucking fun shit.
but they're saying it every time they talk about war. They are against war.
Right.
Every time they talk about murder, they're against murder. Every time they talk about hate, they're like, it's a cathartic thing because they're on the camp of trying to create a world without hate. And that's their way. That's their way of contributing to making a world without war. And their contribution to a world without hate is by being the people who are singing about it and doing something that lets themselves and lets other people like let that stuff out of their system.
Yes. Yeah, it's a societal release valve that is completely necessary. You know, if you bottle that shit up, you just get the weird Tipper Gore people, you know, and like and that's why they hate it, because they don't have that kind of catharsis. They don't have that outlet. They don't have that release valve.
He'd quote the song lyrics just as if they were scriptures out of the Bible.
The kids that listen to this music are killing themselves and each other because of it. The music is called heavy metal.
A fundamental misunderstanding of like what it's even for, you know?
Yeah.
And
yes.
And just like looking at it with such a surface level understanding that all they can do is just be afraid, and anything they're afraid of, they have to get rid of it.
This is Metallica, the most powerful new metal band in the world. According to a national lobby group, the Parents Music Resource Center, there have been 30 teenage suicides and 150 murders because of heavy metal since 1986.
So Metallica is one of the big four bands. Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Slayer. Their heyday was concurrent with and happened at the same time as hair metal, glam metal, pop metal, everything that was coming out of the Sunset Strip.
To me, the Metallica kind of heads, that whole scene, they are what the hair metal people I think they were, or at least were masquerading as, right?
Oh, that's a really good
You know what I
point.
mean? Like they're teasing their hair and they're trying to look all crazy and they're all glammed out and whatever. But like, you know, conservative kind of way of looking at music and these kind of scenes, they don't make the distinction.
Exactly. Because Dee Snider from Twisted Sister was there in front of Congress. And
he was like
taking nothing away from him.
Totally.
Like that is one of the most admirable.
He's a badass.
Fucking
dude.
endless respect for Dee Snider for being the one who did that.
Since I seem to be the only person addressing this committee today who has been a direct target of accusations from the presumably responsible PMRC, I would like to use this occasion to speak on a more personal note and show just how unfair the whole concept of lyrical interpretation and judgment can be, and how many times this can amount to little more than character assassination.
And who went and represented not even just his narrower metal community, but like all
music,
all of metal and all of music.
Yeah.
Holy shit. But it to your point, it's interesting that they call out that band. And as far as I know, they didn't call up Slayer or something.
Wasn't even on their radar. Congress was conflating these two scenes, even though if you're going to be scared of one of these scenes, it was the Metallica Slayer group. But even then, you peel back the layer of these guys, there's fucking nothing there to be afraid of. These guys are musicians. They're just playing music.
And beautiful fucking music. So here's the other thing about Metallica too, is like when you go back through Master of Puppets and like just all the let alone all the incredible work that is being done through all the heavy sections of music on that album, but like the moments of like the parts that have like acoustic guitar and shit, it's like Beethoven level
magic
composition shit. It's genius music.
The arrangements, the performances, the songwriting craft.
Which that songwriting craft, you know, there's already lots of teasing and of Lars Ulrich going on in this discussion, but he's the one like most responsible for the genius of the way that their music is arranged.
Yeah.
The passages of how it comes in and out and goes up and down, and like how when a section comes back around, like the drums cut out for this moment, or like the vocals stand out alone, or you know, like all this genius shit. So when I sat down to listen to Saint Anger to get ready to discuss it, I was like, okay, how long is this? And I looked at the track listing and I saw that every song is like 6, 7, 8 minutes long. And I was like, fuck.
Dude, I had the same, like.
But that's Metallica. Their songs, they are an 8-minute long song band, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about Metallica is so fucking badass is that like you don't get tired of songs that are 8 minutes long with them.
Usually. I'll say usually you don't.
Yeah, usually. That right, of course.
If we're talking about their first 5 records, I'm with you.
Slayer, on the other hand, is a shorter than 3 minutes or shorter than 2 minutes song band, right? And they have just as many verses and choruses and bridges as a normal pop song. It's just that the tempo is so fast that the song is over quicker, right? Metallica plays at that fast tempo too, but their song is 3 times longer than a pop song. So they do both. It's both more content and it's way longer, but it's engaging the entire time, and it all belongs there. It all makes sense. They come back to the chorus like 6 times in a song and you don't get tired of it. You like run the track back again because you want to hear it again. How do you do that?
The quality of their music when it was good was it was astronomically good, right? And they were like that for a solid 10 years. They made better music than almost anybody, right? So I think it's kind of part of the tragedy that is this album, because even though they made albums in between the Black Album and Saint Anger, in a lot of ways, to me, this kind of weirdly feels like their big return, like they're coming back and they're releasing, because they had been away for a couple years, even though they had put out a couple albums in the 90s that just weren't didn't quite hit, but also weren't as like egregious as this.
Yeah. So tell me if you agree with this. Basically, the Black Album is the last one of their great album.
100% agree. That's still true. Although for me, there's a caveat with the Black Album. Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice for All. Those first 4 records are like, those are like metal Mount Rushmore type albums, right? Those are just like pure.
Yes.
Everything good about metal is contained in those records, and I'm including like they're up there with Sabbath and fucking anybody. I don't care who in the metal genre you want to throw against those records.
Right.
They are pound for pound just as good as any of those fucking records, right? In a lot of ways, I think the Black Album is just as good as those, but it's not a true metal album like those other 4 were.
It's stylistically different.
Stylistically, it's very different. Yeah. It's the seeds of what you start to hear on St. Anger and everything they've done ever since. Metallica stopped being the Metallica of thrash in 1990. That was the last time that version of Metallica existed. Metallica since the Black Album has been Metallica trying to reclaim the glory of the Black Album and trying to recreate and recapture the pop magic that was the Black Album, because that was the first album they brought in Bob Rock, who is a notorious figure in this whole story.
Have you got a plug in here?
Wait. So what exactly are you doing?
Well, you'll just hold it above the
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah! Bob Rock was probably the perfect producer for Metallica in 1990. He was the perfect producer. His whole shtick, forever, his whole shtick has always been, I'm going to take this hard rock act and I'm going to, in my opinion, dumb down and dilute what's good about them and make them more palatable to a wider audience.
The Black Album was them taking a very clear, noticeable step toward the direction of marketability and wide audience appeal. No doubt. It's like objectively
true.
You can hear it.
Yeah.
You can see it.
Yeah. And look at it. Look at that record. Almost every song in the track listing was like a gigantic single, and it sold 16 million copies.
I mean, yeah, it's different, but dude, it's
great. I will
incredible.
I think it's really good.
So good. Well written, well made, everything about it. It's amazing. They did alienate some aspect of their fan base, I think. And I do remember people accusing them of selling out at that time.
I would never go that far, but I mean, that's what they did. If you want to boil it down, that's what happened.
Some people, but in general, everybody loved it. But the next 2 albums after that, which were also produced by Bob Rock, Load, Reload, that's when I think that is the era where they really started to like alienate their fan base, and they started to really put out music that was like, wait, what the fuck
that was
this?
The canary in the coal mine that was like, oh, you guys aren't even the same band anymore. Like,
they really left a strictly metal sound. They definitely left the zone of thrash metal, and they went more into like a hard rock thing. There was kind of almost this like southern good old boy aspect of James Hetfield and his voice and the way that they play. It makes me think of like a Confederate flag waving.
Yeah.
This whole element of this vibe of their music that started to come out, which is like, what the fuck? It was confusing.
Yeah.
I remember being really confused by Metallica through this period of time.
They're marketing towards very insecure young white dudes who outwardly want to project that they're like, I'm fucking badass, I'm fucking sick as fuck, but deep down are like, they're just like everybody else, but they just put on a tough exterior, right? And I think this is like, what cemented that in my brain was watching the fucking documentary, Some Kind of Monster, which goes into the whole backstory of the making of St. Anger. This is a documentary about Metallica going to therapy. Like the whole thing is about them talking about their feelings. And the first fucking thing they do to market this album, to film one of their lead music videos at San Quentin maximum security prison.
I think you guys know the idea about trying to shoot a video in San Quentin.
I think that a huge part of Saint Anger and what it suffered from musically, and also what it suffered from in terms of the way that it was perceived by people when it came out, had a lot to do with the time. This was a point where the Big Four and like all the great legendary metal bands from the 80s and the 90s, like
they were gone.
They were gone,
yeah,
man.
It was over.
Metal and heavy music was in new hands by this time. That like the people who were in charge at this point were like Korn. And a really big one is System of a Down. Towle was fucking everything at this
big
time.
Yeah.
So metal like meant something different than what Metallica had meant.
And unfortunately, Metallica's reaction to that was to try to ape off those bands, you know, which was kind of a short-sighted decision on their part, I think.
I think they did it unconsciously.
Yeah.
They specifically had always looked at what were the cliches, what were the tropes that was happening in metal, and they consciously said fuck you and didn't do that, you know? And I think that like that's what they were trying to do when they were making Saint Anger. I think they were trying to do their own thing. They were trying to do what was in their heart. But there's like noticeable influences from like System of a Down specifically.
Yeah, I agree with you, save for there's one moment in the documentary, Some Kind of Monster, where the band like brings Kirk Hammett in. Kirk Hammett, one of the greatest guitar players who has ever lived. And they sit him down and they go, you know this thing that you do, guitar solos, this thing that is so awesome that you do and that you're known for and that people love about our band and our music that you do.
Right. Half of our fans are fans of ours because of this that you do.
We actually don't want you to do that on this record.
You started talking about the idea of the guitar solo as we have known it, maybe being something that was a little outdated.
And Kirk Hammett, he points out something bigger than not doing guitar solos. He specifically calls out that idea as indicative of a trend that's popular right now. So if we want to make our music super dated to this time period forever, sure, let's do that. But we're just aping off of other bands that are doing that.
But can I say something that I think is bullshit? This whole fucking solo out, dates the whole thing. That's so bullshit. You know, if you don't put a guitar solo in one of these songs, that dates it to this period, and that cements it to a trend that's happening in music right now. I think that's stupid. And I think it's totally trendy.
That's not what I said.
Right. So there was at least one voice in the room that was like, we can set the pace. We can set the tone. They are fucking other bands. We're Metallica. We can do whatever the fuck we want. You know, we don't have to chase these other bands, you know.
There are no guitar solos on Saint Anger.
Yeah, there aren't any.
Which is a trippy thing to think about. There's a Metallica album, a thrash metal album, because they did go back to thrash for this album.
Yeah.
With 0 guitar solos.
Guitar solos serve more than one purpose, okay? One, hearing someone at that level of mastery perform like that is thrilling. It's exciting. Another purpose they serve, when you have a band that plays 7, 8, 10-minute songs and their arrangements are like insane like this, they serve the function of adding actual like longevity for not just for longevity's sake. Like there's like a reason the song is long. It's like a musical passage where the music all of a sudden can feel exciting, and it's something different than just another verse and another chorus and another verse and another chorus and another. It's just like, and that's one of the things on this album that drives me fucking insane, because there's so many moments where a guitar solo would be the saving grace for this record. Would save this record. I don't think people would even shit on it as much as they do. If there was like, throw us a fucking bone, dude. It's Kirk Hammett. And he represents the aspect of Metallica that's a pure good time, and it's fun and it's free and it's like a party. You know what I mean? And it's like everything they consciously moved to get away from when they made this record. Like they consciously were just like, one of my favorite parts in the documentary, it made me laugh out loud, is like as like James Hetfield and Lars are like lamenting their life of the last 20 years, they're just showing like James Hetfield like drinking on stage and like having a great time and playing in front of a million people, and like girls flashing their tits and like fucking like strippers all over them, and like they're in limos and they're in like these awesome tour buses and they have all this money and they're selling all these records, and meanwhile you hear them just being like, yeah, we just couldn't do that anymore. It was took too much out of me. It was too much. We just can't live like that anymore. And it's just like this insane disconnect that like they like as guys have just, they're totally different people. Like they are everything I love about 80s Metallica. They are the antithesis of that by the time they get to St. Anger. They are not even the same fucking dudes anymore.
So when you say they're different people during this period of time when they're making St. Anger, so on the surface, yes, they're older and they have, they're now he's living with the body and the brain that has been sitting in all the alcohol for all those years, right? His like emotional outbursts and his instability and like the source of like his own unhappiness and shit, right? Not the same as when he was 23. Right. Yes, I agree with you. But I think on just a level below that, it actually really stands out to me, and I think it's admirable how they are the same exact people. And it looks ugly only because they're in their late 30s now at this point. And they look more like man children and they're millionaires now at this point. And they're famous at this point. And I think that's the only difference. And I think it's actually kind of cool how, there's like moments in the documentary where they're like just being little bitches to each other. And just being like, what the fuck you doing, man? You just like picking at me all the time. As soon as I open my mouth, you're like being an asshole to me, bro. What the hell? You know, and just like, I just want to yell fuck in your face. Fuck! 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 You know? And like when they're millionaires in their late 30s, it looks stupid. But I was imagining them being 21, and it's like that's exactly how they would act. They'd be like, "Bro, what the fuck, bro?" Yeah. Throw a beer at him, like, oh, I'm just trying to give my idea, and you're shooting it down, bro. You know, and it would be totally appropriate. Like that's probably how they've been the whole time. Yeah. But when they were young, it was cool and it was metal. Yes.
Who would have thought we'd be standing here with Metallica today, the band that would punch each other in the face and right, like Lars. One time James hit you in the face because he didn't the way you perform. I mean, Jesus, that's right. Talk about the good old days.
In a lot of ways, you're right. These guys are essentially going through a spiritual rebirth as people, right? They're realizing this situation we've been in is unsustainable. So we have to figure out a way to make this work, which is why they brought a group therapist in. Any other band I could see doing that and it having this kind of awakening and it totally working. But Metallica is kind of trying to have it both ways by being like, we go to bed at 9:30. We go to bed at 9:30. We don't drink anymore. We're not crazy. We're just regular guys. I'm a dad. I go to ballet practice. What's the big deal? Who cares? Yeah. But at the same time, making an album called St. Anger and making the most aggressive, at the same time and
trying to still be shitheads at the same time.
Yeah, they're trying to have it both ways, man, which is what makes it kind of not work, because in the 80s, they were full bore. They were fucking...
That's the root of this whole problem with this album right there, what you just said, dude.
They were
shit.
full bore.
Yes.
They lived it. They owned it. They
Yes.
fucking walked that walk. They were fucking everything people thought they were and more.
Shit, man, this is a fucking rock and roll band. Let's fucking do it full on, or let's not do it at all. Fuck.
And at this point,
yes,
they're trying to do it in they're Metallica in name only.
I've never understood this phrase and how it makes sense, but trying to have their cake and eat it too.
Like, we've proven that you can make aggressive music without negative energy. Yeah. Okay, and I don't think anybody ever thought that that would be possible. 20 years of hatred sold 100 million records. Now look at it.
I'd rather hear the Metallica album where they went full bore singing about ballet practice and Lars selling off his art collection at fucking Christie's. I'd rather hear that Metallica album than them pretending like that's not who they are right now and writing all these songs about being fucking angry. Oh, Lars, what are you mad about? You just sold... in the documentary, it shows him, he goes to Christie's and he sells $30 million worth of art that was just like sitting around at his house. Like, at the same time, then days later goes to Congress and complains that fucking people aren't buying his music. It's like, dude, suck my dick, Lars Ulrich. Like, seriously, dude, get the fuck out of here. Like, you have nothing to be mad about. You don't even have a good reason to make an album anymore. Like, and again, and this comes back to the other point I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Of what makes that this is a very callous business decision of an album. Bob Rock as producer is business decision number one. He's a crossover type producer. He's there to make hits. He's there to make big, giant selling records. Business decision number two, and I'm talking about these are external factors. These are management, label, everything. Business decision number two is bringing in a therapist. Is these guys, this money machine that we have in Metallica, less than 10 years ago, they just sold fucking the biggest selling record ever, dude. We need to throw money at this problem to fix it because we need the money machine.
We need our goose to lay another golden egg.
What works best as a business? What if you just do a stadium tour where you play Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then you go home the rest of the week?
I mean, why do you guys want to film? Even you said you hope that the film is made. I mean, I think
that's a big question, because for me it was really just, it came along with being in Metallica.
There's so many people involved that were relying on Metallica to make music, to make them money, that there's no amount of money they could throw at this problem that wouldn't be worth it, right? And that's exactly what happened, right?
Yeah.
So you get this album where everyone in the band is so fucking bored. They're so bored, they don't want to be there. It feels like being in Metallica is like a fucking chore for these guys.
We kind of get to the point where the song is looped twice in the Pro Tools, and I know Bob's gonna hit me up for some kind of lyric ideas. Oh shit. I was like dreading the whole process.
And the only reason they're there is because of all this external pressure of, you gotta put out another record, you gotta come back, you gotta fucking tour, you gotta do all this shit. Everyone's telling them they have to do this shit, when I think at the end of the day, I think that they probably did want to do it, but definitely not for those reasons, you know? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on how all the people around them, management and producers and whatnot around them, you know, we're looking for the dollar signs and whatnot with this. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's literally their job. That's their role that they play in the whole team, you know?
Either Metallica is saving face and they don't want to let on that they're also on board with all those reasons, which I would understand, not wanting to show that card, or they're kind of being taken advantage of, right? They're basically being forced to do something that that isn't coming naturally to them. They don't want to be there. They don't even like the music they're making. They're constantly butting heads. They're about to break up, you know, like.
I got the impression that they were completely on board to be the band members. I mean, they're completely on board to be there and to make this record, but not for those same reasons.
Yeah.
I think that they were three dudes who were like, we are Metallica. This is what we do. We make records. Yes. And I think it was personally important to each one of them to make a record, make it good, express themselves and everything, you know? And it seems like what they were experiencing was difficulty with that. Yeah. And they would show up and work and it didn't go well. And that made them feel really shitty. Right. And they were hating the experience of doing it, but I think they cared and they wanted to do it. None of them wanted to abandon it. None of them wanted to find themselves in a position where they said, we started a record and we failed to finish it. So you don't think that they ultimately ended up like coming through that trial, like making it through the gauntlet, like finally making it through hell and actually ending up with something that does have some kind of value after all that arduous suffering? Like you don't think they ever got to that point? Do you think that this album is just, it was shitty and it was shit, and when they stopped working on it, it was poop and they released it?
I don't think it's good. No, it's not good.
I think that this is a good album that was ruined by some very simple, mundane choices about where knobs are, and like some choices about how we're going to record this and record that and put this together. I think that this is good music that got spoiled by some mundane stuff like that. I think the heart of it, the meat of this is good, I think.
The idea is it should sound like a band getting together in a garage for the first time. Only the band's Metallica.
They had a very clear production philosophy. What ruins this album is all of the ways that they actually didn't
do that
full bore with that philosophy. They didn't go all the way through with it. And I really think that if they truly did, this album would be actually kind of the opposite of what it is. I think this would be like a masterpiece. And this would be something that is like a game changer in rock music, which it's not. It would have been Metallica, the old heads coming through, doing something completely the opposite of what all the hot new kids who were successful were doing.
Showing the kids how it's done.
Because the new metal thing, all this is very, very highly produced, very carefully polished records. There's nothing wrong with that. For the most part, I especially in terms of production, I think they're fantastic. I think they sound really good. But this would have been Metallica coming through and making something that is more honest, more heartfelt, more complex, with a higher degree of skill, and actually accomplishing it with less help, if they had actually done it that way, which they were this close to doing. One of the things that Bob Rock had mentioned in interviews, one of the ways that he went to accomplish that raw sound was by putting minimal effort into the mixing process of it. Let the tracks be the way that they sounded as they were recorded. And normally you record a lot of tracks, you do a lot of movie magic to it to make it sound a completely distinct way than what the band really sounded like in the studio. But they wanted to do the raw style. So simplicity of effort is not the same thing as the simplicity of production, of actually recording it in a simple way. When you see the gear that they used to make this record with, the studio that they were in, all of the gear that they used to record it, that is not raw, simple gear. Okay? Just because I didn't turn the knobs, that is not the same thing as that this is raw. They got another Frankenstein thing, which is something that we've never heard before, which is music that was recorded with pristine, high quality, ultra rare gear that no garage band has ever seen in their lives and will ever be able to see, because each piece of it costs more than they make in a year.
like it's so easy to see how they got so off course, because in the documentary they visually show you like a counter every once in a while of how many days it's been since they started. They work on Saint Anger for over 700 days. Sure, you go into it day one being like, we're gonna make a band, we're gonna sound like we're rocking out in a garage, and it's like,
that's a good point.
2 years later, probably not gonna be the same idea anymore.
That's a really good point, and I didn't even think about that. Is the amount of time that they gave themselves to arrive at a finished product already does not match the production philosophy of capturing a band in a garage, except it's Metallica. There are many records that have been made that are actually that, of the capturing of a band live in a moment and what they really truly sound like when they're all playing together, warts and all, right? There's that has been done, and there's lots of examples of it. Okay, and those records sound in many ways way different.
It's funny to me the things they decided to adhere to and the things they decided to ignore of their production philosophy. It's like, it's like, we're gonna make it sound like four dudes in a garage band. Okay, how are you gonna accomplish that? Well, we're gonna use the most amazing recording equipment that's available in the year 2001, and we're gonna record them for 3 hours in a room playing. Oh wow, that sounds awesome. But then we're gonna copy paste and chop shit up and move shit all around, and it's gonna actually be a totally different thing. Oh wow, that's not exactly what you said. Like they say the funnel discussion where they're like, yeah, Lars Ulrich is like Pablo Picasso if you put him in a funnel.
You're hearing excerpts of 3-hour jams. You're hearing, you look at it as a funnel. You're hearing the very part at the bottom of the funnel.
Right.
You know, you can almost equate what we're doing now to arranging.
You're like Pollock, the painter.
He is. He's Pollock, the funnel arranger guy.
Everything you're hearing in Pro Tools is like at the end of that funnel spout. It's like, wow, that sounds like dog shit, how you're describing it. I don't want to hear what that sounds like, but okay.
Okay. This is a good point that you bring up, because it's really worth noting, and it is also, to me, the source of a lot of what's wrong with this album. They took on a completely new workflow, a new process of writing music that they had never used before.
Yeah.
Which is essentially all the music and all of the vocals are written by committee. And they had never done that. Apparently, all the vocals before this album, of all their music before they made this album, James Hetfield did that on his own. He writes the lyrics, he comes up with how the vocals go, just let him do it, and everything that we've ever heard and love, he did it. But this...
We're on the same stream of consciousness here. We're just all working on the same creative wavelength, and it's inspiring for me. Now I can further express myself with these lyrics now that, you know, James has opened that door for Lars and I.
It even, in the documentary, it looked like they had other people who were not in the band coming up with ideas and submitting ideas for lyrics and vocal ideas and stuff. The therapist was coming up with lyrics.
Lyrics by committee was clearly not a good idea for this band. It was, and you can see it on James Hetfield's face in the documentary. He is straining to balance trying to like be a team player.
He's being such a team player.
He's trying so hard. And at the same and at the same time, he's seeing how excited Kirk Hammett is to like contribute. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind watching it, I'm like, dude, they're about to take his solos away. So like, you gotta give him something. Like, of course, let him write the lyrics.
He's being, James Hetfield is being such a bro.
There's at least one phrase in every song on this record that is just like a really dumb, like kind of like they thought they were being really clever. Like, my lifestyle determines my
lifestyle determines my death style.
Determines my death style is like,
my lifestyle determines my death style, a rising tide that pushes to the other side.
So the stupid part about when Kirk wrote that line was not that he wrote it and said
That it made it in.
It's that for some reason everyone else in the room was like, bro,
Yeah.
fuck yeah, bro.
The fact that
Like,
it fucking
what?
made it on the record is the funny part. It's like dude,
Exactly.
anybody writes dumb lyrics.
You just say, nice, dude, cool, okay.
Yeah, what else? Yeah, what else you got, man? Hey, this is your first time. Hey, it's all good. What's next?
Keep going.
Lifestyle
Keep going.
determines your.
This is good. This is good.
You know, something else. Anything else you could say right there.
Now I can further express myself with these lyrics now that, you know, James has opened that door for Lars and I.
I had this running theory that the therapist, like they would basically have sessions with their therapist, and then like James Hetfield or whoever the fuck, like the therapist would say something in therapy and they would just be like, oh fuck, where's my pen? Oh shit. And they would write it down and that would make it into the fucking record.
Oh.
The one that I feel it in my bones. I fucking know this is how that went down is
oh shit.
I want my anger to be healthy.
He says that?
I can't remember what song it's on. I want my anger to be healthy. Or, oh man, this is another one that Kirk must have came up with is
I was going to say Kirk had to have written down.
I'm madly in anger with you. It's so bad. So bad. It's like this clever. It's like, oh, do you get it? Like most of the time people say I'm madly in love with you. But I'm actually madly in anger with you because I'm in Metallica. It's like, dude, stop.
I feel like that line would be kind of cool if they said it one time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
On like an unreleased track that came out after I died. Yeah, that'd be cool. I agree with you. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this today, and after like the third or fourth song in Saint Anger, I actually gave Metallica and this album a point. I was like, one of the things I wrote in that I liked about it was, I was like, you know what? One of the things you can't say about it is that it's not like remarkably consistent sounding. Like it is like every single song, you know, Kirk Hammett's over here, James Hetfield's over here, his guitar at least, his vocals right here. The drums sound like they're fucking smashing around inside of a toy box, falling down a flight of stairs right in the middle here.
It's the worst piece of shit we've ever done, and it's not leaving this room.
But the thing is,
yes,
on this, the album's so long and the arrangements are so long, and every song sounds the same. Like, and I'm talking not just the mixes all sound exactly the same, because they are exactly the same, but also the way the songs are composed, like the dynamics in every song are basically the same in every song. Like they're at like this, they hit this speed and then they fucking stay there for like 8 minutes every song.
Yeah.
So it's like after 75 fucking minutes, it's so labored. It's so hard to not just check out. I have to imagine that Metallica had to dumb down these songs so that Bob Rock could play along with them.
Search and seek and destroy.
It's so fun playing this kind of music.
Searching.
The Saint Anger is the only record that Metallica made during a window of time where they did not have a bass player, right? There was the two guitar players and the drummer, right? They temporarily did not have a bass player. And so Bob Rock, who was the record producer, he plays bass.
Metallica gets a new bass player, you know, at the consternation and frightfulness of their therapist and Bob Rock. They're all worried about, oh, let's not rock the boat. That's at least how I read into it.
Oh, yeah.
You're kind of pissed about the bass player thing, right?
You see it? It's written all
He secretly
over.
wants to be in the band.
I'm fucking bitter, man.
I think you will never, ever, ever find a permanent bass player.
Maybe that was there, maybe not. I might just be reading into that. But one of my favorite parts of the documentary is watching after Trujillo comes in and just fucking owns it and kills it. And literally days up to before that point, they were still like belaboring this process and like talking about how much they fucking hated being in a room together still. And we're talking like 2 years into this process. They're still being like, fuck, we hate this shit. Then Robert Trujillo comes in, just destroys his audition, lifts the spirits of everybody there. Everybody in Metallica all of a sudden is like, holy shit. Oh my God, this is amazing. Holy fuck.
I looked over at him during Whiplash, and he was just right in the pocket and in there. And then afterwards, when he played it alone with his finger, it hadn't been played that way since Cliff.
It's amazing to see how much he brings to Metallica instantly. Instantly, they are back to, they return to form almost immediately when he walks in. And they also instantly reward him and change his life for the better for doing that.
They're like angels for each other, man.
It's really beautiful to see. Yeah. And to me, like I see that, and I see like such a clearer change for these guys take place, and way quicker than like the years of like therapy and bitching and talking and rehashing all these fucking arguments over and over again and just bitching and whining and complaining.
Personally, I really think that magical moment that happened with Trujillo coming in, I don't think that would have been possible without those years of the hashing out and the therapy and everything. I think that it only was what it was because of all that, because of all the blood, sweat, and tears and the ugly work that happened to make that beautiful moment possible, I think.
We worked on ourselves, identified what part can we work on, so when someone else steps in, it's clean. They're not stepping in our shit, you know?
So what would you say to summarize? Let's begin to wrap this puppy up, I suppose. So just to summarize, Nate, what would you say strong points, weak points of St. Anger by Metallica?
I don't need to belabor the weak points because the weak points are self-evident, frankly. If you put the record on, it's pretty clear. You can hear them with your ears, and they're famous. Yeah, exactly. The snare, the drum sound is terrible. The bass is hollow. Every fucking song sounds exactly the same. The mixes are all really boring. The band is hobbled by Bob Rock playing bass. The lyrics are really bad. Those are the bad things. But the good things about this record, this is a very earnest record. This is a band that is like so honest and forthcoming with what they're trying to do and what they're trying to get across. It's really, really admirable that they had the guts to put this out even. And to do it under such insane scrutiny, not only because they were Metallica, but because they had like this documentary being made and they were causing all this fucking ruckus in the media with Napster and all this shit. If the difference between Metallica playing shows today was whether or not they made this record, I think everybody who's seeing Metallica in the year 2022 would be like, I would take St. Anger fucking every time if it means I get to go see Metallica. So in that sense, it's a huge record because it saved the band. It saved the band, even though in a lot of ways it kind of ruined the band and tarnished the band, but it saved them at the same time. It's like a crazy, ugly, complex thing that had to happen.
So I think that the strong points of this record are the music. I think that it is musically strong, but it doesn't get out from under the weak points, which are some of the decisions made about the way that we're going to make this record, which is the vocals are going to be written by committee. The way that we're going to record the vocals in a very clean, dry, upfront way, and the way that we are going to make the motherfucking snare drum sound. The big question. I mean, it's not the biggest question that we've had, but it's a nice fancy little thing that we like to do in our discussions. Would you recommend St. Anger, Nate?
No, but it's complicated. I will put it that way. No, okay. Unless you are fascinated by, this kind of bizarre type of situation that results in an album.
Yeah.
Honestly, you can't have the album without the documentary. Those two things are married to me now. I wouldn't want one without the other. So, yes, if you watch the documentary. No, if you don't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
if
a really
you watch
good
the
point.
documentary,
Yeah. Like if you have seen some kind of monster and never listened to it, then yeah, you gotta listen to it. Come on. Yeah, that's a good point.
Brandon, how about you? Would you recommend people listening to St. Anger?
The only people that I would recommend listening to St. Anger to are people who are like kind of like collectors of listening to music. Like if like if you like to listen to music in the way that some people like to go see exotic animals in a zoo, or like you gotta like see all the fascinating, interesting creatures of the universe. And if there's some bone that you have in your body which is like, I gotta hear it because it's so interesting and so unique, and then this is an album that belongs on your list of things that you should hear. It's fucking fascinating.
In that sense, this is like a can't miss. Like this is a notorious album. You have to like at least know about this. Like if
it's one of those ones, just so that when everyone in the corner of people who no one else is talking to at the party,
who you're definitely hanging out with, if you're watching this video, that's where you are.
That's where you belong. That's basically what this video is that corner of the party. So that when everyone else is talking about St. Anger and mentions the snare in St. Anger, just so that you're plugged in, you know what people are talking about. Yeah. Don't be left behind by the other fucking nerds. If you haven't heard it, you do your nerdly duty and hear this. Yeah. But those are the only people that I would recommend this to. Well, Nate, my lifestyle determines my death style.
Is that really how we want to leave? Lifestyle determines my death style.